Welcome to SpockCast, episode 60. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mr. Mississauga.
Hello there.
We also have Jaime Lopez Jr. working from home in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Alrighty. Pretty good. It's going pretty good. How you doing?
You say Jaime's working from home like he's the only one now.
No, we're all working from home. We're
that it's any different.
We're tired of talking about viruses and flattening curves and things.
Yeah, let's talk about some science fiction stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get our fantasy on.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll start off with some fact check. I have one. The documentary I was talking about, which covers Atari and Sony and PlayStation and all those kind of guys, and Xbox, was called Rise of the Video Game, and it was a 4-part thing I watched on Discovery Channel on the YouTube, but it was produced by Discovery Channel. So
cool.
I think it was replayed like a couple of months ago on Discovery. And Jonathan, you have some fact checking of my own facts.
Yes, I did. We were talking about Lost in Space, the original Lost in Space from the 1960s earlier, and in our last episode, and you were not sure if Jonathan Harris, who's one of the stars of that, had been also in My Favorite Martian, but looked it up, and the star of that was Ray Walston. Right.
And where I got mixed up with that was, I was just talking to Jaime just before we started recording. I never watched that show. It was before my time, right? But I remembered there being somebody connected in there, but it was Bill Bixby, who went on to be Courtship of Eddie's father. He played Eddie's father. And then he also was, of course, the original Hulk, right? Bruce Banner. He was
David Banner on the show for some reason.
Oh, right. Different name.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Apparently alliteration was out in the 1970s. Who knows?
Oh, was that? Yeah, I guess that's a sort of a trope in comic books, right?
Yeah, well, Reed Richards, Peter Parker. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne. Yeah, I get it.
Nope, that's not a thing.
Anywho. Well, let's move on to some headlines. We got some headlines. Jaime, hit us with the headlines.
Yeah, a little bit of a glimmer of light in the dark, now that everybody's in the pandemic mode, and a lot of folks are either in some sort of lockdown or shelter in place, or at least general avoidance of people in general. There's going to be a theme here on this episode, and that's about stuff becoming available digitally. And in this case, we've got Disney bringing Frozen 2 to Disney Plus 3 months early. I'm not exactly the target market for this, but I imagine that there are many families out there that appreciate the fact that they can watch this sooner than it would normally come to, based on typical theatrical release to streaming sort of cycles.
Yes. I noticed that Star Wars, the new Star Wars, is available already. And
it's available on iTunes already. You can purchase or rent it, but and that was, I guess, a few days early, not...
Right, but will that eventually be coming to... That'll come to Disney Plus eventually, right?
It will eventually, yes. Yeah. I think obviously they want people to spend money on it before they spend money on it, and then spend money on it some more.
Right, and we had, because we had Force Awakens and the other one, Last Jedi, on our Canadian Netflix for a long time, right? So before the big purchases, stuff like that there. So yeah, kind of wondering when this stuff will come on.
But there's probably a lot of people, because it is spring break or March break for a lot of younger students who are also going to be out of school for a while. So I think this is, obviously it's a good PR move, but it's also just it is a nice gesture, all things being equal, for a time when a lot of people are trapped at home with their children and the weather could be or not be good. So it's nice. It's a nice move. And you're right, Jaime, there'll be a theme of these moves that are both good PR / good for the consumer.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop when, the profiteers, other than the hand sanitizer people, but the other profiteers start waking up and realizing there's a buck to be made here. Anywho, mine is, again, it's on the same theme of, this is on the theme of washing your hands, which apparently is now really important. We were talking last week about singing happy birthday twice while you wash your hands to sort of give yourself that 2 minute of hand washing activity. Shelby Young here has posted a video on the Twitter, which is in keeping with our theme. She has got her hair done up like Princess Leia, and she's got a white shirt on like Princess Leia, and she's doing the Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi speech from the full speech, the one that R2-D2 eventually frees up, from A New Hope, Star Wars Episode 4. So if you want to time yourself brushing or washing your hands, do the Leia speech from Star Wars. We'll have a link in the show notes for that.
Kind of impressive that she could do it off the top of her head.
Well, yeah. You don't think she practiced that like 1,000 times?
Either way, it's not a small speech.
No, not just true. It is. Admittedly, the video is like 1 minute long. It's not full 2 minutes. But I suppose if you spoke it at the original speed, you might get the full 2 minute hand washing out of it. In any case, all right. So this next story I was poking around some stocks and stuff like that, and this is from Barron's.com, a site that talks about finances and stuff like that. And just an interesting idea here. Apparently, Disney's stock has crashed, and analysts think that Apple should buy Disney. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I guess it makes a lot of sense, although, I don't know. I mean, I guess there wouldn't be any monopoly issues in that. I wonder if they'd have to divest anything. But I don't think so.
Right.
The only thing I could think of being problematic is their relationship to the iTunes, Apple TV Plus stuff and how that works vis-a-vis Disney Plus.
Fair enough. They may have to free themselves of the contracts with other distributors under that, right?
Yeah, but they wouldn't have content, or at least not a bunch of it, that would fall afoul of this, I don't think. It's not like sort of the more problematic thing of Disney getting together with Fox and all the other acquirees it had.
So what's the valuation, Tim? Does it say in the story? I mean, if the assets of Fox cost, $60 billion? So Disney's all in, including that, have to be, 175, 200 billion? I would just be off the top of my head, but...
Well, they bought Beats for $3 billion in 2014, right, Apple? It's interesting. I was reading another article. I didn't post it in either of the two shows, I don't think, that Apple has just signed a deal with a bunch of music publishers.
Disney's market capitalization is down to $168 billion.
Right.
And it says that Apple has $98 billion in net cash and could buy the company at its current value.
A fire sale price, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice when they call $168 billion a fire sale. But yeah, down 11% is not nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, would Apple get rid of it? The $98 billion net cash, I mean, that's what they have floating around in the banks, they figure? Or?
Yeah, that's just their liquid assets.
Right.
That's not their market valuation, which is something...
Yeah, trillion.
Trillion. Yeah.
Trillion with a T. Yeah, interesting idea. We'll have to see what... I mean, it's just a speculation, I think, on the part of...
well, they've been talking about it for years, right? They were saying that Netflix was something that they had purportedly kicked the tires on in years past, right?
Right, okay.
I mean, given that's sort of a missing component, obviously they've started the Apple TV Plus, but they don't really have that catalog of their own, right?
Right. Well, and is it a mystery what Netflix is worth?
I don't. It's a private company, is it not?
Don't know, but yeah, that's what I mean. Because even people who are on Netflix don't really know what network, what people are actually getting out of watching, how many people are watching and how often shows get watched.
No, it's publicly traded. It's on NASDAQ. $330 a share.
I wonder if it's gone down
about $850 million. That can't be right. That's not their valuation. That's their... Anyway, yeah, we'll maybe look that one up for next time. But it's, I think it's certainly within the $98 billion liquid assets purchase price that if they were looking for it.
Right. Interesting. All right, carry on.
Next one we've got is Regal Cinemas, the second largest theater chain in the United States, is closing all of its theaters.
Really?
It has already done this because this was as of March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. As we record, it is Thursday, the 19th of March. And additionally, AMC has, as far as I know, not closed, but is not allowing more than 50 people in a theater at the same time.
Really? Yeah.
So they're at reduced capacity, and I have to imagine they will close relatively soon. And that's if they're not forced to close based on shelter-in-place type activities.
Yeah. Well, we our theaters just got ordered to close a couple of days ago, and bars and things like that too, right, John?
Yep. No restaurants that don't offer takeout. There's no seating in restaurants anymore, and all Cineplex theaters across the country are closed. That's our main chain of movie theaters. They're all closed indefinitely, and a lot of retail spaces are starting to close up as well. So it's getting a little more, and then a lot of places are also going to reduced hours. Even grocery stores and stuff like that now are sort of 12 hours a day max kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely creeping across, but yeah, it is certainly limiting the options for people who sort of thought, well, maybe we could go to the theater and just sit 6 seats away from everybody, but I guess it's just not worth the expense of keeping it open.
So on a side article here, I don't know if this will still be available by the time we go to air on Sunday, but I just wanted to here's a list of games you can grab for free or at deep discount prices right now. Two of them are some of our favorites, Alto's Adventure and that other one. What's it called?
Is it Alto's Odyssey? Was the sequel?
Alto's Odyssey, yeah. Those are from Canada's own Snowman Publishing or Snowman Games, and Goat of Duty, Mini Metro, Treasure Adventure Game, Capcom Media Bundle, Life is Strange, down to like $3, Super Bit Blaster XL, Base Junkies, Sims 4. People still play Sims? Wow.
I think they're living it now.
Mario.
It's become reality.
Some Resident Evil 3 if you're into that kind of stuff. Yeah, so check this link out. We'll put a link in the show notes for this one. All right, carrying on. Let's not get distracted. So next time you're up.
Next bit we've got is Universal is going to release films that are currently in theaters or were just about to come out as $20 online rentals starting Friday.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that currently includes The Invisible Man, The Hunt, and Emma, and then the upcoming Trolls World Tour sequel, which is coming out on April 10th, will be available as video on demand.
Yeah, you got to keep an eye on this one. This could be really interesting because this is a trend that has apparently been sort of bubbling around the edges for a while, that in an effort to mitigate culture that is starting to not go to the theater as much already.
Right, yeah.
That they're talking about this as an option for people who don't enjoy the theater experience but want to see the first run movies and are willing to pay the premium. I wonder if this is something that is just for, the duration of, our pandemic that we're going through right now, or if this is something that will become a little bit more of the norm.
Well, we talked about last No Time to Die, Fast and Furious, and Mulan, I think, were other movies that were slated to come out and had been pulled back by the studios, right?
And the list has grown. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Stay tuned, folks. There's more to come. Right. My next one is a real quick one. I noticed the other day when I was watching television that Parasite is coming to Crave TV in Canada in May.
Nice.
So, yeah. And I think I talked last week about Nerdwriter. He's got I kind of don't want to give people who haven't seen the movie yet this link, but he does an interesting piece on the montages and the way that Bong Joon-ho puts together scenes, and one particular perfect montage in the middle of the movie, but it kind of gives away one of the major plot points. So I don't encourage you, if you haven't seen the movie yet, to check this Nerdwriter thing out. But it's interesting how he compares, the editing style and storytelling style of Alfred Hitchcock. There's even an Alfred Hitchcock Easter egg in the movie too. But yeah, so anyway, coming in May. So I assume it'll be coming sometime around that time in the United States of America. For those of you down there, or up there, I guess Jaimi's north of us, isn't he?
Technically, yes. Even though I always think of Canada as being to my north, and you are in Canada, so I just assume it's north. But the country doesn't run, the border doesn't run completely parallel.
Yeah, we're below the 49th parallel, I think is the borderline, right, John?
Yep.
Yeah, technically. All right, cool. So, Jaime, you got some more headlines for us?
Yeah, this is a new series coming out on Amazon Video called Upload, which is actually kind of in similar themes that are going on in science fiction nowadays. So this idea here, and it seems to be like a comedy, possibly dark comedy. The idea being that you can decide to upload yourself and live the afterlife in the digital realm. So it starts out with a guy who is a tech bro who got seriously injured, and he kind of has to decide: do you want to have this dangerous life-saving surgery, or do you want to just go ahead and lean really hard into the skid and go into the digital afterlife and upload yourself? So I'd say check out the trailer. This will come out on May 1st. Looks interesting enough to try out an episode or two.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, apparently includes
Heaven Can Wait, digital version of Heaven Can Wait, right?
Yes, that's kind of what was coming to mind as well. But I could think of Transcendence and arguably Westworld and arguably Picard, and there's a lot of media that seems to be touching on this sort of same theme.
Yeah, it was a Black Mirror episode like that too, isn't there? Isn't the San Junipero a little bit like that? The one woman or the two women who are dying, and they're trying to decide whether or not they want to live on in the afterworld, digital afterworld.
Interesting. All right, next.
All right, well, here we are. So speaking of movie delays, The Black Widow, which was expected to be one of the bigger movies of this year, has been delayed. So no actual date given for its rescheduling, given obviously the uncertainty. But that one obviously hurts because it was going to be sort of our first chapter of a new phase for the Marvel Universe. And obviously how they were going to sort of position this one, given that Black Widow was a character who died in the previous Avengers movie. Sorry if you haven't watched the highest grossing movie of all time. But it'll be interesting to see how these movies get reorganized in the end, because how they're going to fit these into a schedule and how they're going to still, make the kind of money that they expect to make off of these when, there's this uncertainty. It'll be interesting. I don't know if it gets postponed by months or year or what.
I kind of wonder what's going to happen to movie theaters in general. I mean, like we've already, like Jaime sort of said, there's already a bunch of closures happening, right? And, we've seen the drive-in theater, which used to be something we used to go to all the time when I was a kid, as an option. I think there's only a handful of drive-in theaters left in the country, right? And especially in North America.
Could be a new thing again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, will it or will it become that you just get a big TV and watch it at home with, your loved ones and shelter in place, right?
Well, I guess it depends on the duration of this kind of uncertainty, right? And again, it depends on the economics too. Does it make more sense for Marvel to sit on this for a year, and will the interest still be as high if they wait? I don't know. It's a good question.
Or do they split them up and make them like Jessica Jones kind of,
Yeah, I mean, it's such a different type of filmmaking too, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Different storytelling, I guess, right?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, and the profit margin's just so high on those things, right?
Right.
Marvel puts out one of their tentpole movies and it's going to make, $1 billion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not so much if they can't get people going out to the theater, so.
Well, I guess, again, could, if it's $20 to see The Invisible Man, how much does it cost to rent a copy of that to your house? Would you pay $50 to see Black Widow in your house tomorrow? I might.
Really?
I might.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Jaime, what's your number? What would you pay to see a Black Widow today?
It's so difficult because I think these answers will vary based on like how big is the amount of family you have immediately around you who can make use of this. Like I think for you with the the family and kids, I'm like, all right, I think your number can be higher. Mine, I think I'm only going $25-$30 because it really just be me and my significant other. So that's $15 a piece. It's a little bit of a slight discount on tickets if we went out to the
But what does
movie
an IMAX movie cost you?
Okay, so let's see. So let's say the base normally of 16, and then you add 5 for the IMAX, so we're talking 21. And then if it was 3D on top of it, you add another 5. Yeah. So you have to 20. What did I say? 21, 26, and then popcorn and other things. It's not a perfect sort of calculation because my home system is not anywhere near as good as the movie theater. So that also comes out in the calculation too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wouldn't be the same experience. I don't know that, I certainly enjoy watching those movies on my TV when they arrive there, but it's a very different experience than that first time you sit down to watch one of those big, huge, epic movies on a big
Especially
screen.
With the sound systems.
The sound system and the IMAX screen and everything. I mean, I think you and I are the slowly dwindling minority on that, but, it is still an event to go into those kind of movies. I like my home theater setup, but it certainly can't hold a candle to that.
Sure. All right.
Next up, Orville fans, good news. While we all patiently wait for the 3rd season of The Orville to arrive on Hulu, and there is still no, as we know, release date for that one, Dark Horse Comics is going to be publishing The Orville Season 2.5 as a comic book. It is going to be 2 2-issue episodes, and it's going to be written by David Goodman, who is an executive producer on the show, and drawn by David Capezza. And they worked on. There was a season 1.5 that they did for the publisher before, and it's going to come out on June the 3rd. So it should be interesting to do that. So I'll read the synopsis here. When seemingly hostile Krill ships cross into Union space, the Orville intercepts. Captain Mercer learns they are en route to a planet that left the Union decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Scans have discovered a moon-sized construct above the planet, and the Krill intend a preemptive strike strike against the presumed weapon. But is it? Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Something to tide me over while I'm waiting for season 3 to not only come out, but complete. So I can binge it all on Hulu in 1 month.
There you go.
Have you not watched it?
I don't have Hulu as a regular subscriber, and I don't feel it's close because there's other stuff we might watch, and that might end up convincing me to watch some other things on Hulu too.
You don't want to cave on that package that they had with Disney Plus?
Disney Plus, I don't think has enough for me yet. I think it would be predominantly The Mandalorian, and I'm not even sure if there's something else.
Oh, Clone Wars. New season of Clone Wars.
I think I need to go. I only got about halfway through Clone Wars. Oh, yeah, wait. It's not on Netflix anymore. It's probably on Disney Plus, the whole series.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus, as is Rebels, as is, yeah.
All right, it's getting closer. It's getting closer, right? It's harder now.
Well, the plan apparently still is to release 2 of their new series this fall, too. There's Marvel series, so maybe by this fall you'll be ready.
Funny thing, I was trying to watch a couple of Apple TV shows today, and they got the Spinning Wheel of Death.
Oh,
I had to switch over to Disney Plus and watch something.
All right, next up, sad news. So we lost another bit of our childhood. Lyle Wagner passed away this week. Lyle Wagner was Steve Trevor on the original Wonder Woman TV show that a lot of us grew up watching, and he was great. He was big, tall, strapping leading man type guy. He was also he was on bit parts on lots and lots of other shows. He was on Carol Burnett's show. He was on all kinds of stuff. Very recognizable figure from the 1970s and 80s. And 84 years old. So sad piece of our childhood.
Yeah, I used to watch him on Carol Burnett too.
Yeah, he was often the straight guy, right? He was very much the sort of
he was sort of big and built like David Prowse, like a bodybuilder kind of thing.
Yeah, big barrel chested dude, like big guy. Yeah.
So is Harvey Korman and is Tim Conway still around?
No, Tim Conway passed away last year.
Right, and I think Harvey Korman's gone too.
He's gone as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just Carol Burnett and what's her name?
Oh yeah, good old what's her name from Mama's Family?
Yes,
Vicki Lawrence.
Lawrence. Yeah.
See, dig deep enough, it's in there.
Yeah. Right. Well, sad news about Lyle Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace. All right. So I was talking about this yesterday. Sony revealed the specifications for the PS5, the PlayStation 5, so they have. I've got 2 links here. One sort of talks about the actual thing, and the second one is a 10-minute chopped up video of the announcement by I'm not sure if he's the vice president or whatever of whatever, but it was clearly, in keeping with our times, it was sounded like it was coming from a sound studio. There was no audience sound, no audience reaction. But what was funny for me was I watched it to see what the big deal with what PS5 was, obviously, but the when they stepped away, like when they sort of showed from the back of the theater shot of the guy, giving the speech, they had these cutouts of characters, right, like of people sitting in the audience, and they came back to it a couple of times during the broadcast, and they didn't move. Oh. So they were clearly, it was like a Mystery Science 3000 kind of little black heads there. So it was kind of odd thing to do. So
yeah, our number one fan watched the whole thing live as they were doing it, and he said it was very much more. It felt like a game developer's announcement versus a "ta-da, we're here" announcement. He said there was no actual box, no actual controller, no actual games, no actual price, no actual release date. It was all focused on how to develop games on it, right?
Oh, was it? Yeah. Well, what was odd about the whole presentation was he spent a lot of time trying to justify why they're putting a solid-state drive in the thing. It's 2020. We've had these solid-state drives for almost 10 years now, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just getting around to it now and talking about how fabulous it's going to be. Like he pretty much wasted a lot of time, but he spent a lot of time talking about how much faster things would load, because that's one of my favorite things about PlayStation. My favorite game is the loading game. I turn it on, I play the loading game, and then by the time it's finished loading, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
It satisfies all my needs when it comes to PlayStation, right? So
I think a couple of things. I think this was, intended to be the GDC, the Game Developer Conference sort of announcement of tech stuff. So I think it was really meant at that audience and not number one fan territory. This wasn't like, hey, youngins, this cool new game's coming out. It's like, no, hey, developers, you could make some awesome games with this thing. And to Tim's point about the hard drive versus solid state, the advantage of hard drives spinning disk is you can very cheaply put a ton of space in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you do give that up with the solid state drive at the cost of expense. And he was really, really pushing the idea of like, hey, you know how modern games, in order to maintain high fidelity, at some point they have to hide the seams in the loading by shoving you around these twisty passageways, and how many, here we go, here's a cave, or here's a corridor I got to go through, so that it can hide the fact that the level's loading as I'm walking in a direction. And they're really pushing the fact that like, hey, newer game design is like, well, this loads so fast you don't even have to worry about that. Just load it. You don't have to make the weird, walking around or like Tim said, the loading game where fast travel takes me across the universe, but it also takes 30 seconds to load.
Well, I actually forgot about the other game. My other favorite game is the sequel one, the update system game. That's by far, that one's much more entertaining. I don't think PlayStation I don't know about my Xbox, but I don't think PlayStation goes out of their way to hide the loading. Because that's one of the most annoying things. You switch a scene and then you just get the little spinning disc for however long while the next scenes load up, right? Resources load up.
It depends on the game. Some games are a little better than others, but they're a little abrupt at times.
Right. Anyway, so there's 2 links here for people who really want to sit through that stuff.
All right, something fun for us as we continue to try and bring some levity to a heavy world right now. So this one made me laugh. Our friends over at IO9. I just can't even. Okay, so apparently there was a bit of a stir on social media this week because there was a tweet that went out that said that there had been a VFX producer working on the movie Cats, which got incredibly panned for being this weird sort of sexualized cat thing in the theaters. And so this person tweeted out and said, a VFX producer of a friend was hired in November to finish some of the 400 effects shots in the Cats movie. His entire job was to remove CGI buttholes that had been inserted a few months before, which means that somewhere out there exists a butthole cut of Cats, which led to the hashtag going around that was, quote, release the butthole cut.
Right.
It was trending for a little while yesterday. So it has been now shot down by the writer-director, Ben Meckler, who posted just a clarification. There were never any shots of cats with buttholes, or at least by design. None that I saw anyway. However, there were a dozen or so shots where the skin and fur sim was groomed or just folded in a way that really, really looked like a very furry lady genitals and buttholes by accident.
Right.
The task, as typical with heavy CGI films, fell on 2D to paint out the offending articles where it was brought up and spotted. So, apparently there does not exist a butthole cut. However, for a couple of glorious days on Twitter, there was a possibility that this cinematic atrocity, which has already been ripped to shreds, could have also had that as well.
Right. Cool.
That's the only thing that made me want to see the movie.
The buttholes?
Yeah.
No, there's nothing.
This is like the Snyder cut of Justice League. Is that the idea?
I don't know. Are there buttholes in that?
I mean, maybe. We'll never know if they don't put out the cut.
Ben Affleck, no?
Yeah, it's like the bat nipples from the Schumacher era.
That's right.
Did you guys see the Oscars when James Corden and Rebel Wilson came out dressed as cats?
I did. But fully made up, right?
Yeah. It's funny. All right, one last round of headline here.
Yeah, the last pandemic-related one from the headlines is as everybody is working from home and we're rapidly discovering as a global society that we may not have the internet capacity to handle so many people doing stuff online at the same time. In Europe, Netflix has not only been asked, but according to this article, has already decided to reduce its European network traffic by 25% to help deal with the pain. So they've reduced their the bit rates of their streams that are going on there. I don't know. This article doesn't have I don't think they have any comparison shots of, did it go from 4K down to HD? Are we talking all the way down to SD? But presumably, it's not coming in quite as crisp and colorful as it would normally be.
Yeah, so if you were paying for the premium service with the 4K, I wonder if you'd still be getting your money's worth.
Yeah, I wonder if they would give you some sort of credit for that.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't know about you guys, but I had some internet problems last week, and I had just upgraded my internet service last month. And so I ran a couple of speed tests on my network, and I find that my network has dropped considerably in terms of speed during the day. I think that, obviously, think that the providers are dealing with the load and maybe they're throttling back our services a bit. I don't know if you guys have noticed any differences or even looked at it. But yeah, it's that would affect, things like your Netflixes and your Hulus and so on and so forth as well, right?
Yeah, it certainly would. Yeah. I know from my business alone, which is a very small one, there's suddenly 700 people working from home and a lot of them doing Skype calls and everything else during the day.
Right, yeah.
Multiply that by the number of businesses that are now doing that, and it's pretty easy to see how that gets gobbled up pretty fast.
Yeah. It's been a long known thing, or maybe not known to the public, but in internet service provider worlds, back in the day when we had modems and things like that, we used to dial up. You didn't set up enough equipment for every single customer. You set up enough equipment for the main load, like the average load, right? So the infrastructure is set up for the mean, not the peak, right? So all of a sudden, for the last week or so, people have been, sitting at home doing work on their computers at home, the infrastructure was never really set aside to do that, right? So, and I don't suppose most people would notice, but I noticed. Anywho, alrighty. Well, here we are. So before we get into this, I want to say that we have a new listener who's one of our biggest listeners on More Than Just Code. Sent me a message today saying that he started listening to SpockCast specifically to listen to the Picard stuff, and he wanted me to sort of find a way to sort of say when we're going to talk about Picard, so he can skip past all the headlines which we just recorded, and we can get to this part of the show. So this is for you, Sean. This is the reason you're here. This is season 1, episode 9 of Star Trek Picard, Et in Arcadia Ego, part 1. And I just realized too, before we get into this, that we each take a turn doing a sort of recap of the episodes. And I just realized this is episode 9, and I went last week, so I don't get to do another recap until we come back. Woo!
That's right. You get to do episode 1 of season 2 or episode 1 of Discovery, whichever comes first.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Interesting. All right. We'll try and remember that too. So I think this is Jonathan,
it's my turn this week.
All right. So off you go.
All right. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit about the title. So it's Et in Arcadia Ego. And so that's Latin, obviously. Latin for even in Arcadia, there I am. In this case, means death. Arcadia is an example of a utopia. It was a place in Peloponnesia where it was far from the sea and was this sort of beautiful utopian place where shepherds tended their flocks. And so it's supposed to say that, even in the midst of paradise, there is death, which I think is a very apt one as we start getting into this episode. So we start off with a trip to the transwarp conduit. And right where we left off last episode, the La Sirena had entered into this transwarp conduit, followed by a mysterious ship, the Snakehead ship, driven by Narek, piloted. And they're going through this transwarp conduit. Agnes is currently hiding underneath a table or desk, saying, please be over, please be over, please be over, clearly not enjoying the ride. They pop out the other side of this, and they're in the Gulian sector. And they head to the 4th planet in the Gulian sector, this beautiful, idyllic-looking planet. And they mentioned to us that it's taken them 15 minutes to travel 25 light years, and they've come to what Soji identifies as Coppelius, the homeworld of the synths. Narek pops out of his wormhole or the transwarp conduit and decides to ruin this beautiful trip that they've finished and starts trying to blow them out of the sky. He's taking shots at them. He pulls a pretty cool trick where he uses his cloaking device to project a false signal, so they think that that they've zapped him and that he's dying, so they lower the shields because they're going to bring him on board, and then they realize that he was using his cloaking device to project a signal to a different location, and he opens up, drops his cloaking device behind them and shoots them again. And just as it looks like they're going to get blown out of the sky by this guy, all of a sudden another transwarp conduit door opens, and sure enough, it's the entire artifact, now healed, the giant Borg cube that was appropriated by 7 of 9 in last episode. And it is sort of flying in there out of nowhere. All of a sudden...
A beautiful SFX shot, by the way. I had like a little squeal when that was happening and watching that.
Absolutely. It's at that moment when Rafi says, we're getting signal from the surface. We've got 5 bogeys coming up, and all of a sudden you see these things popping up on the screen, and they look like giant Venus flytraps, giant flowers, and they fly up into this into the stratosphere, into the atmosphere, out of the atmosphere, and they basically wrap themselves around La Sirena and the Snakehead Narek's ship, and even around the Borg cube, and start dragging them down towards the planet. With lots of flames and fanfare, and it's pretty weird. And as they're doing this, they start absorbing all the power from the ships. It's at that moment when they're sort of headed down that Picard sort of seems to have an episode. He is lying back in his chair, and they're like, looking at him, and he's not looking well, and they say, "Picard, are you okay?" And he says, "Thank you for coming, everyone." And they fade into the intro with Picard looking not well. We cut back from the intro where Picard is having a dream. He's flashing back to some of the stuff from the earlier episodes, meeting with the Doctor and putting on his badge again, his comm badge from the Starfleet days. And then he wakes up to find Agnes standing over him, and she's got a tricorder, and she says, all the power's out in the ship, but I found this old-fashioned tricorder, which is a little bit of a dig, which I thought was kind of mean, but she's using the tricorder and waving it over him, and she says, it's giving me kind of a strange set of signals here, but I must be just an old tricorder. And he says, no, the tricorder's working just fine. What you think you saw. So he then goes and he sort of looks at her, and sort of she knows what she saw, and she starts getting a little teary-eyed. Then he goes down and talks to the rest of the crew and sort of tells them that what it actually is, which is that he's got that was it aromatic syndrome. Aromatic. There you go. Aromatic syndrome. He doesn't actually use that in this episode, so I didn't have a chance to write it down, but I was trying to remember, because I know, Jaime, you remembered it from a previous episode. This degenerative brain disorder, which was covered in the last episode of Star Trek Next Generation. He's mentioned it earlier here. So he tells the rest of the crew, I've got this condition, and yes, it's fatal, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, and if anybody pities me, I'm going to be very pissed off. So obviously everybody's pretty shocked, but given that they've just crash landed in the desert after being attacked by a giant flower and saw a Borg cube pulled out of the sky, I think they're managing it pretty well. Turns out the ship's still intact. They've landed just 5 kilometers from Coppelius Station on a Class M planet, and Soji remembers that this colony is there, and that's where she's from, that she's born there. But she says she's having problems with her memories. She's piecing together all these facts. She's remembering details, but she said it's not clear exactly what's happening, so they have to go and sort of figure out what's up there. We cut outside. We see La Sirena is dug pretty far into the desert, and there's a funny reference to as they come out, the angry reptiloids and homicidal fungi. I was trying to remember where the homicidal fungi is. That's from the TOS, isn't it?
Maybe.
I couldn't think of it either. I wasn't sure if there was maybe whatever. Okay, do you remember when they had the officer exchange and Riker goes on the Klingon ship and Klingon comes to the Enterprise? There was some sort of thing that was like bacteria or possibly fungi, which is where I'm going with this, that was eating the hulls of the ship, both ships, and that's why they ended up getting into a little bit of a tussle at the end. Do you remember this episode?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, that, or it was like a weird, since Rafi's really into the conspiracy truther stuff, I'm like, oh, maybe she's digging into stuff that Discovery was supposed to be, covered up from, and it's a misinterpretation of the mycelial network.
Right.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was a mycelial crack, but we'll have to dig into that one. That could be interesting. So from there, they step out of the La Sirena and they come outside. They look off in the distance and they see the smoke rising, which is that much smoke. Clearly, it's the downed artifact, the Borg cube, and they decide, what? Let's before we head back to go see the synths, let's go and see if anybody survived this, because they know that Elnor's there and they think that Hugh might still be alive. They don't obviously know that Hugh perished 2 episodes ago, but so they show up at the cube. They decide to stick together. They all show up at the cube. Turns out there's a bunch of XPs still alive. One of them recognizes Picard again as Locutus.
Right. Yep.
And turns out Elnor's alive. They're alive. alive. Seven, obviously, still alive. And so Seven is trying to get things operational so that they can, make sure that everybody can survive. She's plugging in the food replicators, and they said, whoa, can you plug in anything else for us? Could you plug in the long-range scanners? And when they do, they get a very unpleasant surprise in the form of 218 Romulan warbirds en route. Which is at least a funny exchange about, that's not so bad. You only really have to worry about the first 109. Agnes then obviously tells Elnor about Picard's situation because, Elnor, in his inability to hide his feelings or willingness to hide his feelings, says to Picard as they're all getting ready to leave, I don't want you to go now because now I know you're dying. And so there's a nice exchange between the two of them as Picard tells him how proud he is of him. And it's sort of a sweet moment between the two of them, although I suspect this is not the last time they'll see one another. So sure enough, we end up going to Coppelia Station, and as they come into town, it becomes pretty apparent that it is a city of twins. Everybody seems to have a doppelganger, as with Soji and Asha. We're introduced to Arcana, who is one of the people who recognizes Soji right away, and she recognizes Picard as well. She recognizes him as Data's captain and says she feels surprisingly moved to see him, and goes over and sort of strokes his wrinkles around his eyes and is fascinated by his aged face. Interesting exchange. Soji breaks the bad news that there are these warbirds headed for them and that they're in deep trouble. They've come there to wipe them out. They say they only have 10 of those orchid devices, the giant man-eating plants, left, so they don't really have a means to defend themselves. And so at that point we get a really weird new character introduced, Dr. Altman Inigo Sung, who is played by Brent Spiner and says he is the son of Union Sung. He may have created
brother, effectively,
it's essentially Data and Lore's brother. Strange that we've never heard anything reference to that before, but I guess you got to roll with it. And we also meet a character that they quickly identify. Looks very much like the way that Soji does, and they say, "Oh, you must be Jana," but no, it's Jana's twin sister Sutra. So again, back to the theory of duality. Sutra thinks that the admonition, the ritual, the vision that is given to the Zhat Vash is not something that synthetics are supposed to have, not something that humans or organics are supposed to have. It's something that was meant for synthetic minds. And in order to try and prove this, she suggests that having studied the Vulcan mind meld, that she can mind meld with Agnes and help by interpreting this. And so sure enough, she mind melds with Agnes. And I wrote this down because I thought it was a sort of an interesting thing. Life begins, the dance of division and replication, imperfect, finite. Organic life evolves and yearns for perfection. That yearning leads to synthetic life, but organics perceive this perfection as a threat. When they realize their creations do not age or become sick or die, they will seek to destroy them, and in so doing destroy themselves. Beyond the boundaries of time and space we stand, an alliance of synthetic life, watching you, waiting for your signal. Summon us and we will come. You will have our protection. Your evolution will be their extinction. Pretty epic. Again, we saw these same visions and we heard these same messages as part of the admonition that the Zhat Vash had gone through that was so powerful that it destroyed the minds of people. They committed suicide. They went insane. But to see it slowed down, again, we get that confirmation. We clearly see the Starfleet logo. We see Data's face. We see the attack on Mars. And so it sort of brings everything full circle from that first scene a couple episodes ago. Any thoughts on that one there, guys?
I'm not sure what to believe. Like, there's an interpretation that it truly is only meant for, synthetics, that only they have the sort of physical capacity in their, the way that their minds work to really handle what's going on there. So I could see one argument of like, if you're an organic, it might turn you crazy or might make you be overwhelmed with all these emotions and you kill yourself. Like we saw a lot of the Romulan initiates or would-be initiates happen. Or it could be like this giant troll from some other entity that wants to see synthetics and organics fight it out. Right. It's hard to say at the moment.
Yeah, it also took out the Borg ship as well, and made the other Romulans crazy too, right? So, or sorry, that the craziness took out the Romulan ship, right? So, because I guess once they assimilated, that thought became available to the Borg network, right?
Yeah, and that's clearly why they disconnected, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's clearly a plot by the consortium of the Tholians and the crystalline entity who are like, we are neither synthetic nor organic because we're silicon based.
There you go.
Right.
Now, there's the new theory there.
There's a
that
twist.
was to the Reddit list.
So after having this revelation and this big sort of download of information, we get a sort of a quieter scene between the new Dr. Sung and Agnes. She is in there with him, and he's sort of chastising her for her actions in killing Bruce Maddox, thinking that this would somehow prevent this apocalyptic vision that she's had in her head. He says, "Shame on you. You owe a great debt, and if you want to repay that debt, I've got a way for you to do it." And so he pulls back this tarp over one of his tables, and he's building a golem. So essentially, it's a android body in which he intends to place a human consciousness, and
presumably his own, yeah.
Yeah, theoretically his own. And they talk about mind transfer and the idea of turning a human or an organic into an android. And she seems pretty keen to get involved and help out with that. The next scene, we get a little bit more data download. They say that they're able to they've increased their capacity, and they've now got 23 of the orchids, which is still not nearly enough. And Soji and Sutra are arguing over this plan. They have a plan, and Soji is against it, and Sutra says this is the only way. And it's at the end of the scene that we see Narek being hauled in. He's bloodied and he's roughed up, and he's being hauled into custody by the synthetics. Next up, we see Spot 2, the sequel, an android cat. After we already met the android butterflies, we have android cat. Agnes tells the crew that she's going to stay behind while they go back and try and repair La Serena. She says she's going to stay there and she's going to work on the golem. She says she owes a debt. She has to work on it. And there's a nice little moment where they're still clear that Chris Rios and she still have some feelings beyond just doing it in the captain's cabin. Arcana is giving Raffi a device as they head on their way. So Rios and Raffi are going back to fix La Serena. Gives her a device that says it's a fixing device, but doesn't explain how to use it. Just use your imagination. And another nice scene between Raffi and Picard where she sort of says, I know you don't want this, but I have to say thank you, and I have to say I love you. And so she tells him he loves him, and he seems quite taken aback. And she says, you don't have to say it too. And then he says, I love you too. And she's quite tearful. It's an interesting to see Picard's evolving that way. Picard is then in Maddox's quarters, and he's Maddox's former quarters, trying to send a message to Starfleet. He says, we've got a first contact situation. There's an impending attack from the Romulan fleet, and we need your help. Trying to get this message through. He's repeating the message. It's not going through. Cut back to Narek, who is now the prisoner. He's in basically a force-fielded room, and he is being guarded by Saga, who is the twin of Arcana. And he says, please, I want some water. And she says, he says, oh, you have to be nice to me. And he says, how do Romulans treat their prisoners? He says, well, never mind that. She's tempted, though. Saga's going to open the door and give him some water from his backpack. And Soji comes over and says, whoa, don't let that guy out. He's the worst. Do not let him out. He tried to kill me. And there's a very sort of conflicted scene between the two of them where he sort of leans in and says, I love you. And she says, I know, what a sad, twisted thing you are. Very, very kind of, bitter and hostile. After, of course, he tried to kill her. He says, it doesn't matter anyways. They're going to rain down fire. The Romulans are coming and they're going to rain down fire. And she says, no, you won't. And so in that moment, we get the feeling that she's suddenly on board with the plan, with whatever it is Arcana had to say. Picard and Soji then are talking in Maddox's old quarters, and she talks about the logic of sacrifice. She says, I don't understand it. I don't understand why there's logic in, doing a bad thing for good reasons. And so they're having this sort of philosophical, she's sort of dancing around him and fucking in riddles. And while this is happening, there's a parallel scene with Sutra, and Sutra says, it's my turn. I'll relieve you, Saga. Saga wanders off. She opens the force field and sort of leans into Narek, and she says, basically, I have a plan, and it's taking all my willpower, but I'm not going to kill you because I have a plan. And And Picard is back in the room with Soji. He's trying to figure out what's up. He's asking her questions, at which point we hear a scream. They come downstairs, and Saga is dead. I don't know whether that was hanging around her neck, some sort of a pin or bauble of some
like
kind.
A brooch or something.
A brooch has been jammed through her eye, and she's dead, and Narek has escaped. Now,
so there's an interesting thing because what's the name of the clone of Soji? Sutra? She says, "Do you want to get out of here?" to him.
Yes.
And then the next thing you hear is a scream, and then you see it's not Sutra that's dead; it's the other.
It's Saga.
twin. Yeah. And so when did that? So obviously something happened, right?
Yeah. So I think what we're supposed to infer is that maybe even Sutra killed Saga and let Narek go in order to let that happen.
Well, I kind of wonder. Yeah, we can come to this. I kind of wonder if this is kind of like the setup where Commodore O, started the whole thing with the attack on Mars to make it look like the synthetics were so vile that they had to be, banished, right, or abolished. Mm-hmm. So similar sort of idea, because this plot point does lead to what happens next, right?
Exactly. So you're right. There's another parallel there to the same sort of message that led to the synths being banned is that they're now looking to ban the organics. So we cut to a scene where it's not really a funeral so much as it's basically they've got Saga lying there on this platform, while they all gather around and they witness, oh my God, look at her. Look what happened to her. And if this can happen to her, it could happen to all of us, these vile organics. Why they left the brooch stabbed through her eye, I mean, other than for effect, is a little gruesome.
That was for us, I think, for our benefit. Right?
I guess so you don't go like, who was that lying there? So Sutra basically says, you know what? I heard the message that was in Girardi's head, in Agnes's head, and there's this race of high synths, and the high synths want to help us. So I say we activate the beacon, and we get these guys here, and they're going to help us. And she basically says, they're going to come here, and they're going to stop the organics. They're going to, wipe them out. And Picard says, you will become the destroyers after all. And Picard says, you know what? This is ridiculous. You guys don't need to do this. You don't need to be that extreme. Like, we're going to go back. We're going to fix the ship. We'll get La Serena. There's room for everybody. We'll get on the ship, and we'll get out of here. I'll take you back to the Federation, and I will be your strongest, loudest advocate to save you, to keep you alive. And Sung is the one who actually harpoons him and basically says, they're not going to listen to you. They didn't listen to you last time. They're not going to listen to you this time. There's nothing you can do. You're not going to be able to save these people. And basically just undermines him. And so they go through with their plans. So they place him under arrest, place Picard under arrest. They're going to place Agnes under arrest too, but she basically begs her way out to say, I've lived my whole life for this moment. I want to be here with you guys. I want to help and, make up for what I did with Maddox. I want to stay and work on the golem for Soong, knowing that obviously if they're coming to eradicate organics, that he'll be killed too. That's obviously what he's been, working on, thinking that he will transfer his mind into this golem. And the episode starts to wind down with Picard being hauled off and Agnes going off to work with Soong. And then we cut to the last scene, which is in space, 24 hours away from arrival. Commodore O is on the bridge of the lead bird of prey, or warbird, and she basically says, 24 hours to go, and you see this massive fleet descending on towards Clovelius. So, and the end.
The end. Yep. Tune in next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah. What did you guys think of this one? This is a shorter episode. It was only 45 minutes. We've had a couple of long ones. Okay. Yeah, we had a couple of long ones back to back, and the last one, as poor Tim, you had our last episode had the massive data dump of episode. This one was a little more breezy. It kept on moving. Tied up a few more threads, but sort of kept things moving. What'd you think?
I found it a bit disjointed, though, right? Like, they kind of sealed up things kind of quickly in some ways, and then, it's typical of the original series where, Kirk and Spock would get themselves into this situation, and then the tables would turn and they would be, imprisoned or whatever. That's kind of sort of how this particular episode evolved, right? Mm-hmm. We're all thinking, oh, everybody will just go along with Picard and it'll all be good, and he'll save the synth and they'll be grateful for him saving. But all of a sudden, no, they're turning on him, and they're turning on all of organic society, right? So, and this whole concept of the high synths, I mean, that's is that like V'ger again, or the people that fixed V'ger?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that starts to play out what exactly that is. It seems like, do you remember that episode, that really convoluted episode that tried to explain why all the aliens have the same shape? Yeah, exactly. That is immediately where my mind went on this one. Like,
really?
The ancient race had left a message behind, and the message is, we were here first.
Yeah, a little Neener Neener from the Ancestors. This awesome troll, like leaving some weird thing in a like a time capsule at your school, knowing that 20 years from now they're going to see some weird thing in the future.
Yeah.
So interesting. It wasn't sort of was it sort of cliffhangery for you guys? I mean, every episode kind of sort of has been for the last little while, right? Like wanting you to come back and watch the next episode, see what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, none of it was really anything that I found surprising. I mean, there's some synths that don't think that the Federation's any good. Like, that's not a surprise. Yeah. There's, I don't know. I wasn't. There was no twist where I was like, oh, I never saw that coming. I was really interested in the slowed down version of that. The video. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. But no, you're right. I think this was a good episode. It was sort of moving along, but it wasn't like, it really does feel like it probably needs the second half to make it all come together well.
Yeah, I find it kind of odd that. By the way, my prediction next week is that Star Trek will have or the Federation will have received his message, and they will come from the S12 to save the day at the last minute. Anyway, I find it odd that these synths who are all super intelligent just kind of stand around waiting to be told what to do and where to go. By the 3 or 4 characters that are sort of leaders of the group, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's funny because they are sort of living in this very sort of utopian place.
Yeah.
There haven't really been examples of them. They don't seem to be Data level sophisticated in that way, right? Like, right, Data obviously was tactically trained and everything as well. But if they're supposed to be equally intelligent in their capabilities, there's no real great illustration of that.
Well, they all have that Jason Bourne switch too, right?
Well, I mean, do they? Or was that just for her because she was undercover, just for Soji because she was undercover?
Well, somebody mentions at the beginning she was sent on a mission. You've completed your mission or something like that, right? Did you catch that line at the beginning?
Well, because her mission was supposed to be go to the artifact and figure out the conspiracy, right?
Oh, okay.
Because that was why Maddox said he sent them undercover because he wanted to figure out the roots of this conspiracy behind the attack on Mars and why they were done. Right. So she did. She figured out that was the Japage and why.
Right.
So I guess how they would have known that in the 5 seconds after she returned, that's unclear. But
yeah,
I'm still holding on to my idea of of Worf and Riker all sort of showing up as part of that
Millennium Falcon. Yeah,
that squadron. Yeah. I am curious as to. I mean, we've only got one episode, unless it's a monster episode, like maybe in an hour and a half episode, it would be more complete. But I'm starting to have doubts that we'll get more than maybe 75% complete coverage of all the sort of storylines that have been built up, and whether it'll be like, I thought season 2 was going to be more of a harder shift towards, hey, other things are going on, kind of like Disco did. But now I'm kind of wondering if it'll be a couple episodes into the next season that really the sort of tail end of this story that leads into whatever the main thrust is for season 2.
So here's a question for you guys that occurred to me as I was watching tonight's show, and I want to know if it occurred to you too. This was the first time that they sort of addressed, and I guess we knew it from as long ago as 20 years ago from the final episode of TNG, but this is the first time where they really used the word fatal around Picard's illness. Mm-hmm. Do you think we'll see Picard's death in this series?
I don't know, but like where does the whole All Things Must Pass episode come into play then, right? Because he's a lot older in that episode, right?
Yeah, but they've altered that timeline, right? That's no longer a thing, right? Like, he still has the aromatic syndrome, but that was part of his genetic makeup going forward.
Well, how did they alter the timeline in Generations or something? Or
no, they did it within that episode, right? There was the 3 timelines. There was the old, the current, and the future, and then they basically got them all aligned. And when he has that epiphany, Q basically comes to him and says, "You solved it. Your brain basically evolved in that way. You thought in a different way, and now the future is yours to make, whatever." Right. So
you don't think John Delancey's going to show up in the episode 10?
I really, really would love it if Q would show up in next season. I really would. I was thinking about like who else could they bring back, and I was like, well, Gates McFadden would be a good one. Obviously, the Doctor. But I would love it if John Delancey came back at some point. That would be so much fun. And they could bring him back as an older man too, and just be like, "Hey, when in Rome," right?
Yeah. But I was watching an episode which I hadn't seen too often, but the one where Picard, like the 3 captains from 4 captains from different ships, or an ensign, a Nausicaan, and some guy with a blue head, get sent to a planet where they're imprisoned and they're in a chamber.
I remember that one. Yeah, good one.
And they have a substitute Picard.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, episode, because I missed the beginning of it, or I missed the whole setup of it, but at the end of the episode, Gates McFadden walks in and sits next to Picard and kind of gives him that look.
Yeah.
So does she and the Simulacrum have a thing, or
dirty,
like the duplicate copy of Picard? Do they have a fling or something? Or
I think that's supposed to be inferred. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. We don't know for sure. It's like Data and Tasha Yar.
No, we know that happened.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah, because she's very pointedly says, "Data, it never happened."
Right.
Which is a thing that women say when they're ashamed of sleeping with you, right?
I guess, yeah.
I wouldn't know.
I was waiting to see which one of you buggers would do that. I totally was. I was waiting to see which one of you be like, not me.
That one was just hanging out there. I was like, man, I have to take a swing.
Well done, Jaime. Well done.
To be crushed out of the park.
I knew one of you guys would step up for that one.
So actually, maybe this is a good time to who put the preview episode 10 here? Who was that?
I did. I chucked that in there because I know that for the last few weeks we haven't been watching those because you get them in on your view. Yeah. So I found it online and chucked it in there. Tim, I don't know if you had a chance to view it, but there's a little 30-second preview of episode 10.
Nope. I can watch it now.
Yeah, it's worth a preview because
all right, we'll have a look.
It'll lead into predictions for the next episode and how specifically I think the episode will end.
Yeah, you think it's set up for your predicted ending?
So I'm still going with, Worf and Riker show up, and rather than thinking, oh, this is going to actually resolve this season, I'm going to lean the other way and say it's going to be a hard cliffhanger, and it's going to be, Riker has gotten, I don't know, like the USS Titan out of mothballs or something, and he's leading the squadron of Starfleet coming to save the day, and they're wondering like, hey, I don't know, should we fire on the Romulans? Like we got like a treaty with them, even though these guys went rogue, and of course, he found some time to go pick up Worf, and it ends with Mr. Worf, fire, and it's like boom, it's like, oh, see you next year, suckers.
That would be a hell of an ending. I think we should get you on this show or doing some writing for them.
Right. People are like, oh, they'd be losing their minds.
What I thought was interesting about this show is we finally got the answer to how big the La Sirena is, because we now see them standing beside it, kind of thing, right? So we get a sort of general idea. It's kind of Millennium Falcon size, I think, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's got some space inside. I mean, he says they could fit the entire synth population inside, which, again, it's probably a few dozen, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be cozy or comfy, but they'd be alive.
Yeah, well, they don't have to lie down. They all just stand there, right?
I guess.
Yeah, it is more in the small freighter, very similar to the Millennium Falcon, if you think about it.
Or Defiant, maybe, yeah.
Defiant, maybe the Firefly. Yes, Firefly sort of ship, right?
Yeah, that's true. Firefly's I guess Firefly's kind of big too, because it's got that big cargo bay in it. Not that Tammy would know what that we're talking about, but... Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to watch Westworld this week?
I did not.
No, and I'm trying to figure out where it fits into the set of things I'm doing, and I'm wondering if I might delay for like a month and then binge to catch up and watch in real time.
Yeah, it was an interesting episode, like a pretty big sort of departure from the last two seasons. It was obviously they moved to the real world, so it was weird. It was sort of little Matrixy, it wasn't quite as bleak as Blade Runner. It was much more sleek. It was much more sort of modern. But yeah, again, it's interesting to see where they're going to take this show.
Yeah, I thought in season 1 they sort of established that they couldn't leave, because remember she tries to get on the train and she goes halfway and then turns back.
Well, she turns back because she's developed that emotional connection, right? She goes back for the girl that was her daughter.
The little girl, yeah. Which was just an implant, right?
Yeah. So in this one, I don't want to spoil anything, but one of the characters in season 2 gets out of the park.
Yeah, we know which one it is too.
Yeah, Jaime doesn't.
Well, he hasn't seen the previews yet?
Well, have you seen season 2? Did you see
I've seen season 2.
Okay.
I just didn't start season 3,
okay.
Which was on Sunday, right?
Yeah, so Dolores is the only one outside the park,
right,
having escaped at the end of season 2. But yeah, this episode is very Dolores-centric. But yes, very, very cool start. So I'll give you that much of a teaser and off you go.
All right, so do we want to talk about the preview or do we want to just move on?
Let's circle back to the preview. Now that you've seen it, Jaime, how does this tie into your theory?
So there was a lot of pew 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 going on, right? So I'm going to guess that things don't go super well. In this episode, they talked about how the Orchid sort of space plant stuff, they don't have enough to defend against much of anything. Like they can take down down maybe like 10.
Yeah, but they could make more though, right? In time.
Yeah, given time they can make more. So let's pretend that they could take out like the first 109. They still have the remaining 109, and so I'm still thinking, like, all right, like it helps clear things out. It's unclear what 7 of 9 is going to be able to do with the artifact, and can she call like the Fender's Rangers to help in addition to Starfleet? So that's what I'm still kind of thinking, that it'll be the cliffhanger kind of ending for season 1.
There's a clip, so I was able to slow it down as you can do with these newfangled devices. There's a clip right at the very end of the trailer that shows this sort of portal open and these sort of tentacles, robotic tentacles reaching through. I wonder if this is supposed to be the synthetic life, and they, you know.
You don't think it's the Dalek coming?
Well, I don't know. It's it's an interesting vision. Again, I'm curious to see how they resolve this. You know, obviously we know there is going to be a season 2, so they don't have to wrap everything up in a bow. But it'll be it's been building to a head, so it'll be interesting to see how they wrap it up.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the watch list. Hit me up.
So mine are a couple of things that I've got. One is a video from what do you call it? The Jimmy Kimmel live show.
Oh yeah.
I think this is before everything started locking down. As of this recording, Jimmy Kimmel's been doing like recorded monologues from like his iPhone or something in his own house, and then they're using that for content. I think Conan O'Brien is going to do the same thing.
Yeah, Trevor Noah's doing that too. He's doing it at home, calling his co-stars and doing bits on the phone.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so I hadn't even seen that. But in this case, they did have a segment that was, I guess, pre-recorded. That was "Who's the Captain Now?" Star Trek trivia, hosted by Geordie LaForge, Mr. LeVar Burton himself, and the contestants Sir Patrick Stewart and Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who folks may know as the former Democratic presidential candidate.
Is he still a mayor?
No,
I don't think so. But no. I think they still call mayor similar to calling like president when you no longer in office. Do they do that for prime minister?
No,
not so much. No.
So when your prime minister leaves, it's like, hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Well, we just call them former prime minister, right? They don't. You always throw a former in front.
Yeah, but prime ministers usually go into hiding after they lose. Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem to be a tradition. They sort of hide out in the background for a while because we tend to have them running for a long time.
Yeah, but it's pretty good.
So who won?
Yeah, I guess spoilers. It ends up being Patrick Stewart, but Buttigieg does a pretty good job. It seems like it's very clear, just especially given his age, that he had like a TNG era sort of thing going on for him for when he grew up. And I was also pretty impressed because this isn't necessarily typical how well Patrick Stewart did, because it's quite often that these actors don't necessarily know all the nitty gritty detail and trivia about the roles that they play. So I was very pleasantly surprised there.
Interesting. Cool. What else you got for us?
Next two are, they're not going to play very well for the audio medium, so we'll have these in the show notes for those of you transporting at home when you are safely able to pull over your car or something and then take out your phone and take a look. One is a meme on the movie Get Out, the one from Jordan Peele, and this is like the movie poster, but it's called Stay In, and it shows the main actor, on the couch, but he's got an N95 mask, some pasta on his lap. He's got a hand sanitizer in one hand and some toilet paper roll in the other. The other bit of levity is very similarly themed. So for those of you who are fans of The Hobbit, and in particular the Desolation of Smaug, big red dragon played by Benedict Cumberbatch in the movie, they have Smaug the dragon, and instead of having his hoard of gold and treasures, he has a mask on his face. He has some Lysol in one of his claws, and an enormous amount of hoarded toilet paper rolls.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. And the last one for my watch list that I saw today, and it made me laugh, was again tying back into the thing that's on everyone's mind, the pandemic and sheltering and staying in isolation. We had Nick Frost and Simon Pegg reenacting the scene from Shaun of the Dead, where they're talking about what their plan should be. So it's the scene where they say, okay, so we stop by, we, kill my stepdad, we grab mom, we grab my girlfriend, and we head to the pub, and we wait for the whole thing to blow over.
Right.
But in this case, it's the two of them talking on their iPhones, and they're like, no, we're not going to the pub. No, we're not going anywhere. Stay home, make a cup of tea. And it's really goofy funny, but done very much in the spirit of the episode, for the scene from Shaun of the Dead. I highly recommend. It's worth a check out because it's pretty damn funny.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. Hey, Jaime. So if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
All right. And Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
All right. I'm Trapped at Home too. I'm TIMMITRA on the Twitter machine is how you can get in touch with me. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the SpockCast podcast. This is Jean-Luc Picard.
Shut up, Wesley.
Sorry, say again. Just the tag. Gotcha. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the SpockCast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at SpockCast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockCast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/SpockCast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
It's good. It's really funny.
I hadn't really considered that this podcast is sort of the polar opposite of the way we have MTJC, where we have a lot of sort of lead in on this show with the headlines and fact check and stuff prior to getting to the main show. Whereas MTJC leads with the main content and then has a long tail of after show. So that's something I hadn't really considered. It is very different in the way that like TNG is very different from Picard.
There you go. That's the way to look at it.
Similar, but very different.
So next week we're going to do episode 10. That's on you, right?
That's on me. It's like, yeah, I realized like, wait, I don't really have to take good notes this time. I just have to sit back and watch things happen. But next week I've got some time blocked off so I can watch the episode and take copious notes.
Yeah, last week I had, this week I knew that it was my turn, and it was a busy day we're working on some COVID related content for the health agency I work for, and I was working right past until about 6:30, and I was like, oh no, I got to get done. I got to be able to take good notes this time.
Right.
So next week is the last episode. We still have to circle back and maybe think about doing a belated Spockies episode once we get past that, because we never did finish our Spockies.
Nope. And people can't go to the theater and watch the Spockies now.
Yeah, but all the stuff we're going to talk about in the Spockies will be available on demand now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it'll have been the right time. Yeah, right. Timely in their lower definition quality picture, but at least they can still watch.
That's only in Europe for now.
Yeah.
That we know of.
Yeah, it's like, trust us, the special effects were really good. If you can't see them through your real media, real player 98 era sort of resolution.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys are hanging in okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's largely not so different since I've been working from home across different jobs, but for the past 3.5 years now. Going out is definitely different. For one, I try not to do too much of it, and it's predominantly just for go getting some groceries. And it's like trying to make sure that if they do like a shelter in place kind of thing, and if it gets more extreme, just having a responsible amount of stuff, shelf stable food and other necessities.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, I had to go to the office twice this week, and I'm going to have to go tomorrow to pick up some stuff because on Monday I have to go into the hospital for a thing, and then so that means I'll have to self-quarantine. Kind of a drag. I'm not planning on getting anything at the hospital, but you never know.
Yeah, well, better to be safe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing out there. Again, I've been fortunate in that my company is well equipped. I also work from home periodically. Usually at least one day a week, sometimes 2 days a week or more, depending on the weather. So our infrastructure is pretty good for it. So we're managing okay. The biggest trick is you're right. It's going out, into the wilds of the grocery store, trying to find the things you're looking for, store and get past the swarms of people hoarding different products, and that's the part that's a little weird.
It's funny, I was walking the dog today and I noticed that even people won't stop with their dogs to let the two dogs cavort,
No, and it's funny, I had our dog out the other day, and an older couple were sort of walking by and they said, can we pet your dog? I said, well, do you want to?
Yeah,
it's sort of weird to drop all the normal social niceties.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really actively think, don't shake somebody's hand, just sort of wave at them from a distance.
Today they were saying the choices are do the namaste thing where you put your palms together and you sort of bow. The other one is just do the Vulcan hand salute instead of, which is
I don't understand why that's not, a thing, I can't remember the actor's name who did Spock on Disco, but get him to do like a homemade Twitter ad or something, cross promote with CBS All Access.
Right.
Yeah, it's been not too bad though, I will say. I mean, we take the dog out fairly regularly, and obviously I've been out in the neighborhood doing my shopping and stuff like that, and people are, maybe it's just the luck of where we're at right this point in it, but people are still sort of smiling and being polite, and I see my neighbors walking down the street and you just sort of wave and hey, how's it going, and obviously everybody's keeping a respectful distance and a safe distance, but there does still seem to be a camaraderie and a community feeling to it. Sure, it's obviously very different depending on where you are. I live in a suburban area, so it's a little bit different, but I mean, it's nice that it hasn't turned everybody into, as I said, it's a weird situation where you're supposed to stay away from people, but it's not like they're zombies. I could go sit in my yard and everything's fine, and I could go for a walk and everything's fine. It's just, beyond that things get weird, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine what this will be like if it's still, in the depths of it in summertime, where it's like a beautiful day and people would out being active, and you're like, well, you just can't go near anybody or go out to any place where people congregate in large numbers.
Right. I don't know I don't know if you saw here, but there's the really, really bad idea spring breakers out in Florida where it's nice and warm and sunny. They're congregating in numbers that don't make any sense.
Yeah, it does seem to be obviously a younger generation doing that, but apparently the police have been rousing them off the beach saying spring break is canceled, go home, because they're worried that if those people are swapping it and getting sick, that they'll end up in Florida hospitals, which are filled with Florida seniors, and then things get really bad.
Right.
So again, it is a strange thing. They're sort of, well, we're in the lowest risk category. Well, okay, but your neighbor isn't. Your parents aren't. Be sensible. But again, I think not everybody. That's the thing. Isolation really only works if everybody's doing it, and if people aren't, then there's going to be some problems.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to rent The Hunt so I can learn some techniques to take out my fellow humans in case it comes to that situation. I was like, that's a pretty good idea. Yeah, you make a trap out of that, huh? That's pretty good.
It's funny because the news came out this week that they were closing the U.S.-American border to non-essential traffic. So it'll be obviously just people who work and sharing of infrastructure and goods and stuff like that. But again, I think it's kind of a funny notion to think that our border is closed. I think it just depends on the amount of Americans on the one side with guns is how closed it is.
Yeah, as opposed to...
You guys have got the toilet paper and the water. We're coming in.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what they're considering the depths of essential. Even Tesla here is like, well, we're still essential. It's like, do people really need brand new cars now during this situation? I mean, people here locally in the Seattle area questions like, wait a minute, Boeing is still open. What's so essential about building these airplanes? Especially when air travel has been heavily restricted. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's going to be a wild ride, and I think the hot sort of or at least nicer weather months can't come soon enough, so we can see hopefully this virus reacts in such a way that it dies down as it gets warmer.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting studies that came out yesterday that were saying that the timeline that people are looking for of a few weeks to a few months is a little bit ambitious. That if you really want to minimize the number of deaths, that the time frame is closer to 12 to 18 months of social isolation and trying to distance and trying not to go to high-risk areas and everything else. And that's a great notion too. How do you prevent the deaths, but also not prevent the deaths of the global economy and also the people who would go, insane being locked up and, social anarchy and. Going to be a real interesting high wire act that has to be happening over the next few months. So just saying, you might want to practice those shots. I may.
So again, still go to the hardware store and the sporting goods store, barbed wire and a bat.
That's it.
Learn from The Walking Dead. It's a good technique.
Yeah.
Doesn't run out like ammo.
When katana sales go up on Amazon, when you see that as the number one ranked Amazon thing, you know you're in trouble.
Well, we better not win the big lottery. I just found out that the prize center is closed if you win like $1 million, which kind of sucks if you think about it, you know?
You could sit on that for a little while. I mean, really.
Could you?
Sure.
Like if you had a paper ticket, like what would you do, right?
Put it somewhere very secure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Take lots of photos of it and save them in secure areas.
Yeah, put it inside, for sure. Put it inside of like a Ziploc bag, or even better, like a like the archival quality bags that you can get for comic books, and then maybe in a Ziploc bag so that it'll be waterproof on top of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Keep it away from sunlight. Put it in a fire safe, assuming you have one inside the house.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, folks. I think I'm going to go try and see if I can watch some more streamed television.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see The Masked Singer, nor did I get the chance to see Lego Masters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have them PVR'd or?
Yes, I do.
Yeah? Huh.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's that'll be our next thing is, what'd you watch? What are you watching?
Yeah.
Everybody will be looking for the next recommendation.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, the thing is, I kind of wonder, like, what's going to happen to, like, shows like this and More Than Just Code, because people aren't commuting anymore, you know?
Yeah. Although I think people are making a concerted effort to, like, go out for a walk and stuff, too, so you never know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're going to run out of things that you and your significant other agree on to watch, so why not put on the headphones and listen to our respective back catalogs?
That's
59 episodes prior to this one, and I forget, we're at 290...
290.
289 prior to the episode that's
this
about
is
to come
episode
out.
60 we just did right now, right?
There you go, 350 episodes of podcast content for
Jaime
folks.
and Tim and Mark and
you can see the whole family there.
Some Tammy in there for good measure. Some vintage Greg Heo.
Start a subreddit for this nascent podcasting network.
Which network? This one?
The loose federation, the confederation we may call it of
the More Than Just
podcast. We have More Than Just Code,
the More Than Just universe
relationship, such as it is with Roundabout and with release notes. Could always happen. We talked about the polar opposite of More Than Just Code would be nothing but code or just code.
Yeah.
And for SpockCast, I'm a little unclear what our opposite would be unless we went like really hard into like nonfiction biographies or something. There's like a book club and we're reading, Napoleon's biography or something.
Well, the original name for this podcast was Boldly Going, but then somebody else has a podcast named that too, right? So, and Jaime vetoed that name, so we're called SpockCast because of him. It's his fault.
So it just fell into these names, these accidental names. Which
is funny though, because I did come up with the name, but I mean, Spock was like one of my favorite characters growing up, right? So as he is with most people, I guess. The logical one, the logical choice.
Did you catch the one character, Arcanis, fascinating?
Yes, because she's into the whole Vulcanishness.
A little bit of trivia here that I was seeing on the subreddits is that Coppelius and Coppelia Station likely take their names from the ballet of the same name about Dr. Coppelius, who produces a lifelike dancing doll he names Coppelia. It kind of makes sense with what the
Carol
sense
would
are.
know that because she's into that whole ballet scene thing.
All right. Should we call it a night?
Yeah, we should call it a night.
Alrighty.
Hide scene. Talk to you later.
Tune in next time for the big finale.
Indeed.
Woo.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.